One.
Good morning, Mr. Silvera. My name is Nancy Fisher. Today's date is Monday, February 26th, 2024. I'm here to interview Mr. Silvera in his New York City apartment. And the language of this interview is English. The interview is being conducted for the USC Shoah Foundation. My name is Nancy Fisher. Today's date is Monday, February 26th, 2024. I'm here to interview Mr. Miro Silvera in his New York City apartment, USA. The language of the interview will be English, possibly with some Arabic, some French, and the interview is being conducted for the USC Shoah Foundation. Good morning, Mr. Silvera. Would you be so kind as to tell me your full name and spell it for me?
My name is Miro Silvera, M-I-R-O, Silvera, S-I-L-V-E-R-A.
Please tell me, where were you born?
I was born in Aleppo, Syria.
And what is your date of birth?
I was born on 15 October 1931.
And what is your age today? How old are you today?
I'm 92.
What was your father's name?
David.
And where was your father born?
In Aleppo.
And your mother? Your mother's name?
Also in Aleppo, Syria.
And your mother's name?
Rachel Shame.
Do you have siblings?
Yes, I do. I have an older sister. Her name is Renata. And next, then there is my brother Maurice. And there is another sister. Her name was Paula. And then Diane.
Thank you. Okay. Please tell me something about your home growing up in Aleppo. Where did you live in the city?
We lived in the area called Jamiliye. Most of the Jews that are financially comfortable lived in that area. There were some Jews that still lived in the old city because they couldn't afford to move to the more upscale area.
I'd love to hear you tell me a little bit about the history of your family. Where did your grandparents come from?
My family originally from Portugal. I read in a book about my family that is based on over 14,000 letters of the Silvera family that was edited, and a professor in Yale wrote a book about it.
And when did the family arrive in Syria?
I'm not sure when, but I know the first Silvera that went to Syria to open a branch office his name was Eliyahu.
And that was a branch office of what business?
Branch office because the Silvera family were very active in international trade, and they traded from Italy all over up to India. And usually the correspondence took 3 months for a letter to go, another 3 months for a letter to come back.
Would you describe the nature of the business?
Before my father days, I don't know. But my father exported produce of Syria like licorice, lentils, olive oil, and etc. and imported mostly from Italy manufactured goods.
What was the name of the company that he had in Aleppo?
It was called Meyer di Silvera et Fils in French, son.
What was the language that you spoke at home or was spoken to you?
We spoke a lot of Arabic, including some French.
What languages did you read in?
Well, I studied really only French. There was the school I went to, first in the beginning was the called Talmud Torah, which means a Jewish school. At the age of 12, I transferred to a French school. It was called Lycée Français d'Alep. And the study was, in the morning was French, in the afternoon 2 hours of Arabic. But foreigners couldn't opt out of the Arabic studies, which I did. And therefore, except for speaking the language, I cannot really read or write Arabic.
So it's mostly conversational.
Only conversational.
Can you illustrate what your home looked like in Aleppo? What would I see if I stepped in the front door?
The building was very nice, but there was no elevator in any building in Aleppo. So the highest building would be 7 stories, and went by stairs up and down. And our apartment was very spacious, bigger, maybe I would say, estimate maybe 3,000 square feet. And we had 2 maids' room, which was not unusual. Most of families had maids that sleep in. And it was walking distance from home to school. When I was in the Jewish school, I went in the morning about 6 o'clock to the synagogue to pray Shahrit, came back home to have breakfast, went back to school until noon, went back home for lunch, went back to school, and at the end of the day, we had to pray Arbit and Minha and Arbit.
Other than your mother and your father and the siblings who were alive at that time when you were young, what was the atmosphere in the apartment?
Actually, the 3 of us, my older sister, myself, and my brother, were, after that, my mother did not get pregnant for whatever, and the following 2 girls were born about 10 years later. So at the age of 17 or 18, I started traveling. So I hardly knew my younger siblings.
In your apartment that you lived in, did you have your own room? Did you share a room with your brother?
I shared the room with my brother, not because we like to, but we had a spare room if we wanted to, each one of us, to sleep in a different room.
What would a typical Shabbat be in your home?
Went to a synagogue Shabbat evening, Friday. Saturday morning, definitely we went to synagogue in the morning. After lunch for Mincha, we again went to the synagogue, and until the Havdalah, which is the last prayer. So I grew up in a somehow Orthodox environment, but not very strict.
Did you have a favorite holiday during the year?
The
Jewish
best
holiday.
The best holiday is Purim. For us kids, Purim was the best holiday.
How can you describe that for me? Any memory you have of that? Dressing up?
No, yeah, we got presents from my uncle, aunt, and it was very joyful time. And there was, in the synagogue they would offer some snacks, so it was joyful.
What about Hanukkah and Passover?
Hanukkah, it was at home. We lit the Hanukkah. The tradition in Aleppo was, if you are European, you add one more candle. I don't know the reason, but we always had one more candle because we are European.
And Passover?
Passover was fairly strict. We cleaned the house of any hametz, and we ate only rice and no bread at all. And my family was very observant.
What did your family do, for example, to have vacations or leave that environment of Aleppo, for enjoyment?
For vacation, we went to the mountain in Lebanon, and two places that I remember. One is Ale, which is closer to Beirut, and the other one, which is further up the mountain, called Faluga, of which you have a picture here in a fake boat and so on. So we spent, not every summer, but many summers we spent in a mountain in Lebanon, which was beautiful, really beautiful.
Within the household, what role did your mother play?
She did the cooking, and in Aleppo also the bread was baked at home and not was made at home, but sent to a bakery to what they call it. Someone from the bakery, they will send someone who will take the dough from the house, make the bread, and bring it back.
Is that daily bread or is that challah? What is that?
No, we didn't have challah. The Sfarad don't have challah, and we didn't have challah. But this is daily bread. Every 2-3 days, the maid will make the dough and send it to be baked and return to us. And for the observant Jews who will not eat anything that is made by non-Jews, there was an organization that will send someone like very early in the morning to light the bakery fire, so it will not be against what's called in Hebrew bishulei goyim, because observant Jews would only eat food that is prepared by other Jews.
On a typical Sabbath evening,
Yeah.
what was your table?
Saturday night?
Friday night.
Friday night would have regular food. We'll make the kiddush and have the normal food, rice with something, and vegetable.
What was, if it was a mostly Jewish and comfortable neighborhood, what about the non-Jews living around you? What was your relationship, your family's relationship to the Muslim population?
Okay. In where we lived, the rest of the neighbors in the same building will be mostly Muslim, and we have very good, very respectful relationship with them. We never heard one single word of anti-Semitism, or we were respectful of them, and they were very respectful of us. And there was no socializing with the Muslim, because the women have to cover their head. Not because we are Jewish. Even among themselves, the Muslim do not socialize at home, because the women at home can only uncover their face for their immediate family.
Well, was there social interaction with your neighbors or your neighbors' children while you were growing up outside the house?
No. The friends we had were really school friends. If it was the Jewish school, they were all Jews. When I went to French school, there were probably 50% Jewish, the rest some Christian, but a big portion were Armenian. And many of the Armenians also served in the French army.
You mentioned that you grew up in an environment where you were to respect the differences between you and your neighbors. Where did that come from? Who instructed you? Who brought you up to respect your Muslim neighbors?
No, sometimes, let's say, my mother will talk to her neighbor woman across from the terrace, or if we see them in the stairs, but there was no socializing.
When, excuse me, when you moved on from the Jewish school, for example, how old were you at that time? You said you were 12, I think?
I started going to Jewish school at the age of 6.
Right.
Until 12. And from 12 on, I was in the French school.
Did you have a bar mitzvah?
Yes, I did. I did. My family is quite Orthodox. I had bar mitzvah. My mother made a big lunch for the family. There was celebration. I got a lot of presents.
Who prepared you for the bar mitzvah? Who instructed you?
I was going to a Jewish school, so in the Jewish school, at the age of 12, I was reading the Gemara, and therefore there was no question of having special instruction for the bar mitzvah. I grew up in it.
Can you, is there a time in your pre-adolescent or adolescent life that you can point to when you became aware of conflict or the war in Europe?
Yes, I remember in the conflict of Europe were affected not as a Jews, but there was scarcity of products that came from Europe, and there was no more import from Europe. And for example, the bread we ate became sort of dark bread because it was mixed with something else. Outside of that, we didn't feel the war at all.
Well, what about, were you aware from your parents of the approach of the Germans around you, in North Africa? Would you have heard your parents talking about it or reading about it?
Yeah, I remember there was a time, I don't remember exactly what year, when the Germans were landing in North Africa and they were pushing through Egypt, and there was a big panic in Aleppo among the Jewish people, and it was a big relief when the British beat the German in Alamein. And I remember it at that time, were really scared.
What happened then in your life?
After the British beat the German, there was no worry. Actually, because of the war, people made a lot of money, became rich, because whoever had merchandise from Europe didn't sell it, went up in price tremendously. There was some import. Turkey was neutral, and Aleppo is almost on the border of Turkey. And so import from Turkey was free. Of course, Turkey didn't have the manufacturing like Europe, but the truth, we did not suffer at all during the war.
What can you share about the time that the French were in control, the Vichy government?
The
French.
The Vichy. No, immediately during the war, when France was occupied by German, the French in Syria and North Africa went with de Gaulle, not Pétain, and therefore we didn't feel anything at all, because the French were there already, and they were. But at one time, British Army, sometime Australian, came to Syria, and they were at the same time with the French. And actually, in our building, the first floor, was officers' mess club for the British Army. And because it was very scary, you couldn't find, for example, chocolate, we, the kids, would go hang with the soldiers that give us chocolate.
Was there a time when, please, that you, although you said it, that I'm just probing that any of the laws under the Vichy government affected your life, or you?
Vichy never ruled Syria. De Gaulle ruled Syria.
Excuse me. So that's the early 40s. When did the conflict or the anti-Semitism really begin to affect your life when you were in Syria, when you were in Aleppo?
Only after the establishment of Israel. Before that, sometime, rarely, there will be maybe some Muslim kids throwing some stones on the synagogue, or we didn't fight with them. We didn't fight with the kids. They would come, and I don't think we were at any time before the establishment of Israel that there was anti-Semitism to the extent that affected our life.
Nothing bigger than neighborhood children expressing a dislike for you as
We did
Jewish?
not mix. Jews were always Jews. In Aleppo, for example, the Jews lived mostly in a certain neighborhood. The Christian lived in another neighborhood called Azzieh. Every religious group lived more or less in a certain area. For example, you would never see a Jew living in a Muslim or Christian area.
I have this image of people sort of rubbing shoulders and living together, but I'm trying to find out when, the tension really started to build.
The tension started to the day after the United Nations voted on dividing Palestine. The following day, every synagogue and Jewish institution was burned to the ground. The next day. And that's when, so against Jews is not at the time of establishment of Israel, from the time of the partition by United Nations.
If we can go back before that terrible thing happened, I understand that your family built the synagogue that you went to. We didn't talk about that. Tell me more.
No, I think the synagogue that my father built was probably in 1923. So way before the war, before Yeah. At that time, the French war came to Syria in 1923, and after the Ottoman. So, of course, it was before I was born, so I don't know how life was under the Ottoman. But under the French, we felt very secure.
So, but the synagogue that had been built in your family's name was destroyed after partition.
It was burned. But that's the day after the partition.
Did you witness that?
Yes, we could see the synagogue from our terrace.
Was there any sense within the family that such a violent reaction to partition would take place?
No, I mean, the same day, I don't think anybody was killed in Syria that day. But a lot of destruction. We were worried a lot. One day we went to hide with our neighbor. He was the honorary consul of Holland. He was living next to us in the same building. So we hid in his apartment. Another day, our Armenian maid took us to the Christian area, and we stayed there for a few days.
Excuse me, in addition to the synagogues being destroyed, what other parts of the Jewish community were victims of that violence?
Well, there was another synagogue beside the Silvera that was destroyed. There was a Jewish school in the modern Aleppo. There was a Jewish school in the old city that was destroyed. There is synagogue which probably supposedly is over 1,000 years old that was burned. We had a yeshiva established by the Silvera family, in which, I don't know, one of the ancestors bought and put there Keter Torah, which is consisting of the 5 books of Moses and the other called Nevi'im Rishonim. And that Keter Torah was in Silvera Yeshiva in the old city. The mobs did not know. So that yeshiva was saved, the only one Jewish place that was saved during the riots. And the next day, my father went to see what happened, and he saw nobody touched it. And we had the Keter Torah, which is, I think, if I remember, it was written in Corfu, Greece, in 1080. And that Keter Torah was donated by my father in the hands of the president of Israel, Yitzhak Ben Zvi.
But that was many years later.
No, after he was in Milano, right. I think it was in 1965.
But on the day, in the day or the days following the partition, in addition to the synagogues, what happened to Jewish businesses, for example, or other Jewish families in their homes?
As far as I know, nobody was killed, but businesses closed, of course. And Jews became very careful, threatened. The government of Syria issued decrees that froze all properties of Jews, bank accounts. There was everything Jewish was frozen by the government decree. My father, mother, and two younger siblings, when they left Syria, they would not permit them to leave until they donated. They signed officially, donated everything they have to the Islamic trusts.
But in the immediate days after the riots, before they left, how did your life change? In addition to being careful, or
No, we're careful. Yes, we're careful. My father moved his business in the name of Christian friends. They will do the work that my father was doing and give him. He was conducting the business, but in the name of a Christian.
but that was voluntary.
That was after because Jews could not have accounts.
Okay. How long did you stay in Syria?
I left Syria, I believe, at the age of 17 or 18. So I was born there until the age of 17, 18. I was living in Aleppo.
Did you have time to discuss this decision with your family? Did they know you were going to do this? Did they support you?
There was tremendous oppression on Jews, and I was restless. I couldn't leave Syria officially, even though I had an Italian passport. And in Syria, regardless, you had to have exit visa, not only entry visa, but exit visa. And so I told my parents I want to run away to Lebanon. My father objected, but my mother was encouraging. Mind you, I know some people who were running away from Syria, were caught, never appeared again. So the risk was tremendous.
When you left, did you leave by yourself, or were you with others?
No,
or
I
one
lived
other?
with my best friend, and we didn't know really how to run away from Syria. So Aleppo is like 200 something miles from Beirut. So whereas Damascus is only about less than an hour drive. So the first thing we decided to do is go to Damascus, and from there find our way how to cross into Lebanon. So we took, at that time there were limousine services that take many passengers. We went there. When the car arrived to Damascus, we never been to Damascus before. Went down in the center of town, and we decided as Jews we could not register in a hotel. We could not, because we were not allowed to travel even inside Syria. So we walked around until we tried to find somebody who looked Jewish who can talk to him. As we were walking around in Damascus, we saw somebody that looked Jewish. We followed him, and sure enough, after walking, I don't know how long, we hear prayer, minha, in the afternoon. We say, okay, we are in the Jewish area. So we entered there, and there was a rabbi who knew my father. I introduced myself. He said, we can't register, but he was risking a lot. You can come and sleep in my house. So when me and my friend, we slept in his house on the floor. And we told him about running. He said, I don't want to talk about it. He doesn't want to risk his life. He said, you go to synagogue in the morning and you talk to people and find out. Sure enough, we found somebody that said he can arrange for us to run away from Damascus to Beirut. And the scheme was like this. We'll take a train to, we take a bus, go to a train station which was near the border of Lebanon, and pose as students coming for a vacation. Went there, and then the guy instructed us when the train going from Damascus to Aleppo, it crosses very close to the border of Lebanon. He said, we slow down, you jump off the train, and you are on your own. I said, fine. So we hid, the train came, we went normally in the station, we hid under the merchandise, and when he blew the horn and slowed down, we jumped out, the train passed, we look around, and we saw light in the distance. We said, okay, so we walked to the light, and we did. We arrived, it turned out to be the city of Zahle in Lebanon. Went to ask to find a taxi to take us to the Beirut. The Arabs are very generous in that way. He invited us to his house for breakfast. His wife prepared breakfast. We had breakfast there. He said, take your time, I take you to Beirut. And that's what we did. We had breakfast. This taxi driver took us to Beirut, which I don't know anything about it. He said, where are you going? He said, take us to the center of Beirut. And we were looking to recognize some Jewish face. Once we saw someone that looked Jewish, we told him, okay, leave us here, that's fine. And we went down, talked to the guy. I had my aunt, the sister and of my mother and her family lived in Beirut. So went there, I asked where it is, and people showed us. I went and stayed there with them.
I forgot to ask you, when you left, two things. What is the name of the friend that you traveled with?
Moise Kaplan.
And when you left Aleppo, what was the interaction between you and your parents when they knew you were setting off on your own?
No, my father said he was dealing with somebody, a Jewish family, that have a trading company in Beirut, and he was in touch with them, so I could get the money I needed, and I had a great time. I had many friends. We're going out all the time. I had no business, I have no study, just me and my friend were going around in Beirut, and we made many friends, Jewish friends that are either Lebanese or coming from Aleppo or from Damascus. It was easy.
But I meant, the experience of leaving home, of knowing that you're leaving and you don't know if you're coming back. What is that like?
Yeah, but when there is no, my mother was courageous to encourage me to run away because there was no future for Jews in Syria. And I was not the only one who ran away. Many Jews ran away from Syria. My sister, elder sister, ran away before me, many years before, also to Beirut. There was a story. There was a Jewish family that was going from Aleppo to Beirut. So my mother decided to send my older sister with her, with the family. And this taxi who was taking them was attempted at one time to kidnap her. But fortunately, the other family were very observant and noticed, and anyway, they ran after the taxi and rescued her. As you traveled, what was your awareness of the turmoil that was happening in the Middle East? How did you perceive reaction to, partition and the creation of the Israeli state? I feel really it's completely, but you can't change the word, is completely unfair. Jews were, later on, all the Jews of Middle East were expelled and their property and their money taken away from Egypt, Syria, not Lebanon, Syria, North Africa, and no United Nations don't have an agency catering to the refugees and their descendants after 70 years, spending hundreds of millions of dollars. Nobody took care of the Jews. I found a lot of things. If I want to think about it, it is bitterness against how unfair the Jews are treated as opposed to the Arab refugees. I mean, there was a time one rabbi in our synagogue wanted to organize to put claims about the Jews that were expelled and their money confiscated and their property and so on, but it didn't go anywhere. Nobody is interested.
What I'm thinking about is, as you are a young man traveling around this environment, how did you, what was the feeling around you? I mean, what happened in Aleppo and the riots that you described, I'm assuming they happened elsewhere, that there was turmoil and reaction.
Yeah, but, after that, I think maybe no one of my family ran away. My brother, my sister, nobody ran away. And they waited until they got proper papers to leave and so on. And a lot of the Jews at one time, depending, because there was many coup d'etat in Syria. And the time I left was the day when the first coup d'etat happened with the military in Syria, and the new president was Shishakli. He was, let's say, general in the army. And so I didn't think. All I wanted is to get out. I didn't visualize what shall I do, where would I go, and so on. I had family in Milano in Italy, and but I was not in a hurry to leave Beirut because I had good time, until one day my uncle came to tell me they are picking up the mukhabarat in Arabic, the intelligence service of Syria is coming to Beirut, picking up Jews that run away from Syria and taking them back to Damascus. So you have to leave. The next morning, I took the first flight going to Rome, and that's it.
Did your friend go with you to Rome?
Mm-hmm.
Did your friend go with you to Rome, or were you alone?
No, my friend, he didn't have family abroad, and he didn't have a foreign passport also. So he stayed in Beirut. And actually, many years later, when I lived in Hong Kong, we were having dinner one day with friends in my house. And the maid come and say, somebody wants to talk to you. I go, and this is the friend. He came, he was going to Tokyo. He said he came specially to Hong Kong to see me because sorry.
He came to Hong Kong.
So I was in Hong Kong. He went to Beirut. He stayed in Beirut because he couldn't leave. And I don't know how he managed to have a good business in Beirut later on. And he was representing big Japanese companies in Lebanon. They invited him to go to Tokyo. He said, wow, so that's close to where my friend is in Hong Kong. So I stopped over, he came. It's emotional for me. I tell you what, because this guy eventually went to Israel. He couldn't make it financially, committed suicide in Israel. He killed himself in Israel.
Why don't we take a break? Let's just take a break for about 5 minutes, okay? Can we go back to, you're going to Rome and make the connection between Rome, excuse me, Asia? How did you get from Rome to Asia? There's a gap in there.
I went to Rome, and since I was never in Europe, so I took a few days to walk around Rome and stayed, in a hotel and so on. I thought this way I see the world. And from there later on, I took a train, went to Milano, and I found there was somebody to carry my luggage to go to my uncle. So I told him the address is number 41 Fabio Fizzi, Milano. They told me, right here to the station. So somebody carried my luggage. I went to my uncle's home, which was right next to the station. I went up, and they didn't know I was even there. And the back door of the kitchen was open. I went in there. All of a sudden, they see me. Yeah, the wife of my uncle was there. And so after, you have to imagine the freedom. When you leave Syria, you can say the word Israel, you can say the word Jewish, you can say anything you want. You are in a free place. Coming from Syria, I mean, it's anecdotal, not when the French left. We used to speak Arabic and with many, many words of French, with mixed. And when Syria became independent, you couldn't say anything in French. And for example, if somebody give you something, you say in French, merci, thank you. We had to learn what the word in Arabic. We didn't know it even. And when I went to Europe and felt freedom, it's incredible.
Tell me more.
Yeah, and then I stayed a little bit, few days with my uncle, but they had 3 children and so on. So I moved on the little bit further in the same street to my aunt, she had no children. She lived with her husband next to the famous hotel Principe di Savoia in Milano. It was great for me. I made some friends, and it was very nice life until then. I had my sister, older sister. She married somebody originally from Syria, but he lived in Tokyo in Japan. And I said, okay, come over in Japan. And so I went, it was immediately after the peace treaty between the United States and Japan was signed. When was it, 1951?
After the war?
Yeah.
After the bomb was dropped?
No, after the Hiroshima. No, the American occupied Japan and so on. Anyway, at that time, he said you have to take a visa to Japan. It was issued by the American. It was called Supreme Allied Commander Japan, but it was immediately, and then within few months they signed the peace treaty. The Japanese opened an embassy in Rome. I went to Rome and got a visa to go to Japan.
During this time of traveling and exploring and freedom, where you were, what was happening to your father and your mother?
The problem was this: communication by telephone at the time was very, very difficult. You had to make an appointment to make an overseas telephone call. Letters of Jews were opened. They open and they put censorship. They close it and they stamp it censored. So we couldn't communicate really freely. Not writing, not talking. It was very difficult. I was really cut off from my family in Syria. Then my brother, Maurice, he got permit to leave Syria officially. I'm trying to remember what year it was. I don't know. My parents, I know, left Syria again officially in 1960.
That's a long period of time when you didn't really have any contact with them, or
Not really, we were writing, but very plain, few
expression.
lines,
Right.
because it was censored, so we couldn't say anything we want, and no telephone contact for sure at that time. And I didn't have real contact with my parents until they left Syria in 1960. The same week they arrived to Italy, I flew to see them.
What else do you remember about that reunion that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, you know what is it? You may find it funny, ridiculous after I went through in Syria. A couple of years ago, a friend of mine, a Jewish woman, who was born and raised in Kobe in Japan. So I knew her when I was in Japan. And she called me, she said, the British Museum is organizing a trip to Syria, Aleppo, and Damascus. She wants to go. Would I want to go? I said very enthusiastically, I will go. Then I was telling my brother, he said, no, don't go now. Now becoming very easy. Syrians are giving visa to Jews. We'll go, you and me. Don't go with her. She went to Syria, took a lot of pictures, and shared it with me. But thinking about it, I was even crazier to go there. I don't know, people. I don't know whether you appreciate that. There is certain attachment to the place you were born. Yeah.
What else, excuse me, what else can you share about the reunion with your parents?
Where?
When you were united with your mother and father.
Wow. When they arrived in Milano, I flew right away. I made a big, it was very emotional and so on. It was tremendous. I made for them in the big hotel there, Principe di Savoia, a big reception, cocktail party, invited everybody they knew. I knew I had my family in Milano because I have I had aunt, uncle, cousins, so it was beautiful. It was, and I stayed with them. I didn't go to a hotel. I stayed with them all the time I was there. And I had, the truth is, it was, what shall I tell you? it was nice to see somebody that I can open up to. So I told my father that, that in business I'm very successful. I shared with him everything that normally you would not disclose to unless you are very, very close to somebody. Yeah. The problem is my father, who had a very big business where he was in Aleppo, he came to Italy. He didn't have very much to do. He didn't have, but my uncle, my aunt were very exceptionally nice. They will take them out, they will, and so on. And within few months, my father was on his own in Milan. He can go anywhere. He went to a synagogue, and they bought ticket before Shabbat so he can go because he cannot walk it. And he went to a synagogue. They had a very good time. The where they didn't really enjoy was coming to New York, because New York, they don't speak English. Italian can manage. They spoke French, Italian, Arabic. It was no problem for them. But coming to New York was difficult.
When you were moving around and traveling from Europe to Asia and getting on with your life, were you able to be Jewish?
To what?
To be Jewish, to go to synagogues. Did you carry your Jewish identity with you?
I did, but in Aleppo, I can't imagine one day not putting tefillin. Once I arrived to Tokyo, I didn't put it, not even once. I didn't put tefillin. I went in Tokyo, there were a few Jews. They bought a place to make a synagogue, a club with a synagogue. My religion became very mild. But it's different than identifying as a Jew. I identify myself and very strongly as a Jew. But in terms of religion, I'm not Orthodox. On the other hand, my brother is.
After your business accomplishments in Asia, when did you come back to the United States? Or where did you go next?
No, I lived 15 years in Tokyo. I had factories making electronic. I was modestly successful, I would say. And I was working with my brother. We had consumer electronic factories in Tokyo, in Sendai, north of Japan, in South Korea, in Masan, in Philippines, Manila. So we did quite, in Hong Kong, and I lived in Hong Kong. And then...
How did you pick up the languages there?
Hong Kong, they speak Japanese. I did not know English. I never studied English in school. I don't know English. So it's funny, when I arrived to Tokyo, I knew only French or Arabic. And I remember my sister made a party, and I said, set me, with many people for dinner. I sat next to one. After the party, my sister told me, "You are smiling and shaking your head. What the guy is telling you?" I said, "I don't know, but I didn't understand." But I decided to study, to learn, not study. I mean, I didn't go to school, Japanese before English because it is more useful. And I learned at one time, I became really fluent in Japanese.
Why don't we take a break now,
Sure.
have a mini lunch or something, and then come back to your story.
Right.
All right?
Okay.
This is the continuation of today's interview with Mr. Miro Silvera in his apartment in New York City. Before the break, we were speaking about your years in Japan and then your reunification with your family, right, with your parents, and what that meant for you. Could you just speak briefly about the years after Japan, where you went, where you had your business, how you met your wife?
After Japan, yes, we came to live in Great Neck in New York. And we stayed there no more than 3 years, even maybe less. And from there, we went to Hong Kong. And in Hong Kong, we stayed 11 years. After Hong Kong, went to Brazil, Sao Paulo. And there we stayed 5, 6 years. And then we came to New York.
And who is the we?
Me, my wife, and the children, all of us.
Ah.
No, Japan. In Japan, I was not married. It was only me. But coming to Great Neck, I was already married. I have children. Going to Hong Kong is the whole family. Going to Sao Paulo, the whole family. Coming to New York, the whole family.
Where did you meet your wife?
In Israel, in Tel Aviv. Okay. The uncle of her father is a Silvera, a distant relative that lived in Milano, lived a long time. And him and my father were very good friends, besides being distant relative. And one day, he showed me a picture. He said, "She is in Israel and so on. If you want to go and meet her." I went to Israel. We met, went up a little bit. We got engaged. What was there? There was a war in Israel. What war? Let me see. In 1965 or 66, there was a war in Israel. Can you remember? I can find out. Or not important?
The 67 war?
Yeah, must be. Yeah, okay. So the Israel was mobilizing. Italy put a private plane to take Italians who want to go out of Israel before the war. It was imminent, like any day. I flew to Milano, where I have family. Batya, my wife, tried to get passport from Israel to go out, but going into the war, they don't permit young people to leave Israel. However, because she has a brother who was in the military, they gave her permission to go abroad. She went to Milano, stayed with my aunt, I don't know, a couple of days, flew to New York, and stayed with my sister here until we got married.
And what is your wife's first name?
Cohen.
Your wife?
My wife named Batya Cohen
Okay.
before God married.
And how many children have you had?
We have 3, 2 girls and a boy.
And what are their names?
The eldest Karen that you just met, David also he came by, and Vivian, the youngest one.
How many grandchildren do you have? How many grandchildren?
9.
So did all 3 children live in these various countries with you?
Karen that you just met, she lived in New Jersey in Tenafly, so not far away. But she has a small apartment here on Trump Tower, a couple of blocks away.
But where was she born?
Karen was born in New York.
And Vivian?
David was born in New York. Vivian was born in Hong Kong.
How did the history or the experience of the Holocaust in Europe enter your lives? How did it affect you, even though you were not part of the Shoah?
I'm not sure.
How did
I
you
mean,
feel
it
it?
was affecting all the Jews, and we're happy that there is people can go to Israel. At that time, I think the British were putting in concentration camp in Cyprus.
Yes. Yes.
At that time, when I was in Aleppo and the thing, or listening to Call Israel in hiding. We put the radio, close everything, put it on low, and put our ears to hear it. They had broadcasts in Arabic. So we're listening to Call Israel in Arabic.
So you were aware of the British trying to prevent the refugees from reaching
Right, 100%.
Palestine before.
Right. We're very much aware of all the news because we're listening not so much the newspaper maybe publish different and so on, but number one, I can't read Arabic. So newspaper is not an option. The only option is to listen or to listen for a language. But there was no broadcast in Syria beside Arabic.
But you mentioned that you had to do this in hiding. What was the consequence of being discovered listening to this news?
I don't know. I mean, years later, for some Trump charges, my father was put in jail 3 months. But much later, I was not in Syria, but I knew they put him in jail 3 months. And after 2 years he put a lawyer and expense and so on, and the judge imposed a 2-year sentence, but suspended because of his age. That was really broke my heart.
How old was he at the time of...
I don't remember exactly what year it was.
Well, how old was your father?
Okay, let's see. My father was born 1895, the same date like mine, 15 October. And maybe it could have been 50.
Well, we were talking about your hearing how the British were plucking the refugees off the ships and whatever. Do you have any memory of the Exodus?
Memories of what?
Of the ship, the Exodus, that came into Haifa?
No, I saw what I saw in the movie only.
I was asking you about the impact of the refugees and the Holocaust on your life.
Everything, when we were in Syria, everything was in hiding. I mean, if we were to listen to the radio, also, unless it was Radio Aleppo or Damascus, we would have to close and put our ear to the radio to listen to it. And obviously, the news was biased. I mean, it was broadcast by the Syrian.
All right. Well, excuse me. When did you return to live in the United States? What year did you come back?
We came back here the last time, September 87. Why do I know precisely? Because that's when we decided to come from Brazil here, because my son was accepted in Brown University. Karen was accepted in Boston. So we came because I didn't want them, they didn't want themselves also to go to college in Brazil.
Were there other events in the history of the Holocaust in the years after that that you followed, like the Eichmann trial or?
Yes, I read the book of an Italian. He wrote a book. The name of the book, if he is a man, I'm trying to. What's the name of the author? He's from Torino.
Primo Levi.
Primo Levi, bravo. Right, I read his book, and he write in a book, he met the German that captures him or something. He was doing business with them. Yeah, Primo Levi. You know, when I took a course here in New School about the Italian Holocaust, which really was not, no comparison with the German. Anyway, the professor gave a list of 5 books to read. None of them I could find them in the public library here. But you know what? I found all of them in the library of the Hampton, of Southampton.
Do you remember their titles?
No, it has been many years. Many, many years. But I know I was surprised that a small village library will have all the books on the Holocaust, and New York doesn't.
So, as you had said to me when we first met, you were not in the Holocaust, but you left, but you were living in a country that oppressed Jews,
But
that welcomed and then they threw them out.
Number one, I left very early, before the oppression and when my father was put in jail and so on. I left when there was many Jews still in Aleppo. At the end, when my parents left, there was remaining in Aleppo maybe a few thousand only. So my experience is completely different. I was not in Syria when they were really oppressing the Jews, taking their money and so on. I left before. So I only know it by hearsay, not directly.
If we were to talk about current news and anti-Semitism and October 7th, for example.
Terrible. It makes me very, very angry. It makes me very angry. I mean, you know, I tell myself, when I hear after October 7th, here where they killed so many Jews, children, babies, and so on, and I cannot imagine a human being is so vicious that he will kill babies. It's beyond my imagination. And on top of it, then you see the Palestinian, the Arab protesting in New York like they are the victim. That makes sense.
Where were you on October 7th? How did you learn about what was happening?
October 7th, I was here in New York. It was all over the news. Now I'm much older, so I don't travel so much. Hardly. The maximum I go is Florida, otherwise it's difficult for me to travel.
Excuse me, what was it like, given that your wife is Israeli? What was it like on that day for living here with your wife, who had family over there?
She has family, of course. She's in touch with them on a daily basis. She phone. They talk on the phone, especially with her sister. Very often, not very often, practically every day, every other day. And she has Israeli friends here, so she connects with them, and they talk about what's happening in Israel. And I subscribe to Jerusalem Post, so every day I have all the news. There is a Allgemeiner. You also?
Allgemeiner.
Right. I get from them more than once a day news all the time about what I like about it more than Jerusalem Post. Jerusalem Post is 99%, let's say, on Israel. Allgemeiner about Jews in general. And that's what I like about it.
what do you think that you can do about this tsunami of anti-Semitism, this expression of anti-Semitism around the world? What do you feel you can do?
Nothing I can do. I consider it, I'm not citizen, not the United States. I have only Italian citizen, even though I've been living here maybe 30 years and so on. But, and I don't think at my age I can be any active that I was and so on. And it's not really, I don't feel I am really American to be active here. I lived in many countries, so do I feel American? Not really.
What do you feel that Jewish people living here need to do?
I think they should be more forceful, more, I go for checkup to Presbyterian Hospital, and they give you a form to fill, and they say optional religion. I make sure I put Jewish. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the more Jews identify as Jewish, whereas now I read about, every time we see a name, my wife and I go to Wikipedia to see if they are Jewish. We have no connection with them, but I'm proud. I mean, it's any time, let's say, a famous person who accomplished scientist or whatever it is, or who, for example, I make a point. I bring it up. 22% of Nobel Prize winners are Jewish, and the first time at one time went few times to the Japanese association. I forgot what the name. They have on Park Avenue and 67, I think, or 68.
The Asia Society?
Asia Society, but there is a Japanese. I don't remember whether it was there or not. A Japanese speaker was saying that the Jews are, that's how I picked it up. At that time, it was like 24% of all Nobel Prize winners. In Japan, because I lived there a long time, whether in Japan or China, they don't have the religion the way we feel it. I think one time, way back, I was talking to a Japanese girl, and she said she's Catholic, but she also she mentioned some Protestant. I said, he said, all religion teach you something good. The more you have, the better it is. That's their mentality. The more religions you have, they don't see conflict between one religion and another.
You and I were speaking about Barry Weiss before the interview started this morning, and I actually brought a quote from her, if I can read it. I would love your opinion. When anti-Semitism moves from the shameful fringe into the public square, it is not about Jews. It is never about Jews. It is about everyone else. It is about the surrounding society or the culture or the country. It is an early warning system, a sign that society itself is breaking down, that it is dying.
I agree with that. And because not only, she's right, not only about Jews, about everything. Now this woke business and so things that don't make sense, completely irrational. I mean, the most irrational to me, which happened recently, is they are demonstrating against Israel for October 7 brutality. Instead of condemning the people who did it, you condemn the victim. Where is the logic? Where is the... And I don't know whether they say, for example, in Germany, they have a minister against anti-Semitism and so on. Do they do anything? I don't know. I mean, here the truth is, I'm always wondering why so many people are against Jews in particular. Can you say? Why there is anti-Semitism? I read a book many years ago. His name Isaac is a French writer. He wrote a book. The name of the book, L'enseignement du mépris. L'enseignement du mépris, the teaching of despise, something like this. That means from the time, that's his contention, he is a French philosopher.
Is that
Jewish.
Is that Levy? Bernard Levy?
Isaac Levy? No. Levit? I forgot. Yeah, but I remember the name of the book, L'enseignement du mépris. That means the children, from the time they are born, they are taught to hate Jews. And for that matter, for example, many Jews who became famous changed their name, religion. You've heard of a very famous French writer, Audrey Maurois. His name, he come originally, his family come from Alsace-Lorraine.
Malraux, Andre Malraux?
Maurois.
Uh-huh.
Maurois. Andre Maurois. I forgot his original name because he doesn't use it. But he's a very famous writer. He changed his name. Not too long ago, the Prime Minister of France, now a few months ago, was born. The Prime Minister, a woman. Her parents are Jewish from Poland. Born stand, she took the stand, she made it born. I have a friend in Hong Kong. He is Swiss. His name was typically really Jewish, Beracha. He applied. His parents are originally from Greece, but he was born in Switzerland. They wouldn't give him Swiss passport, until he changed his name. So instead of Beracha, became Bera, took half of the name. So I read somewhere, if you want to do away with anti-Semitism, you have to stand up for the Jews. You agree? I don't know. It's an opinion.
How do your children feel?
I am from those who would say assert Jewishness. Don't hide it. That's my feeling.
After this lovely time that we've spent together, is there something that you'd like to say that I haven't asked you about? Something else you want to add?
No, I take it. The most interesting is probably when I grew up in Syria, And while there was, you may be surprised to hear it, while there was some tiny clashes, children and so on, but my father, who had a business in Syria, a big business, highly respected, he had many Muslim friends, and until the partition, yes, there was. I don't say there was no anti-Semitism. There was no anti-Jewish, because the Muslim consider themselves also Semite. But it wasn't so bad. Nobody got killed. No comparison with the Ashkenaz experience in Europe. There was no, I don't remember pogrom. I don't remember burning Jewish stores until partition. It started with the decision of partition. Before that, the best time was when the French were there, better than the Ottoman, from what I hear from old-timers. But in general, we didn't have a bad life. And Jews, because they are more educated than Muslim, by far, and knew foreign languages and could correspond and so on the whole, were doing very well.
Before we close, I want to be sure that we include the story about the Torah. We were about to start that because it belongs to your story.
Yeah. Did I give you the letters of...
We'll look at them. We'll look at them, but
right.
Tell the story.
The story is, we had somebody of my ancestors bought what is called the Keter Torah, the 5 books of Torah, and Nevi'im Rishonim, the first prophet. It was written, that's what the receipt from Ben-Zvi Institute said it was written by Rabbi Sahalon or something like this in 1080, so over 1,000 years ago. And it was sitting in Silvera Yeshiva in Aleppo. And miraculously, it was not touched. When, after the burning all Jewish institution and synagogue, my father went to see, and he saw it's intact. He brought it back. At the time, you could not take any antiquity, any artifact out of Syria. So my brother, who was leaving Aleppo via Turkey, Istanbul, he hid it and smuggled it out of Syria. He took it to Milan. It was sitting with my uncle. Because my father is the oldest brother, he was waiting for my father to decide what to do. My father said, now we are scattered, the family is all over. The best way to keep it is to give it in Israel. He went with my mother to Israel. President Ben-Zvi, he told the secretary, they sent him and escorted him to see, and they made a ceremony out of it. And he went, he gave it to Yitzhak Ben-Zvi. And he got 2 letters, one receipt and one saying how the Silvera family have been all the time very devoted to Jews, whatever. And we left it at that. When I went to Israel after getting married, the father of my wife, Yosef Cohen, he said he would love to see it. Nobody can see it, but me, as one of the family, let's say, who that gave it, you can. So went to the institute and asked them, we arranged it beforehand, and put glove, it was in a big safe. They took it out, choice they can't touch it, and we looked. For him was like the ultimate, and we left. After that, when they put exhibition in Jerusalem Museum or Museum of the Book in Tel Aviv, and not in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem. I want to see. So we started inquiring. He said, I cannot find it. It's not there anymore. Matti Friedman, he wrote a book about the Codex of Aleppo. Anyway, he's a journalist. We couldn't find it. I wrote to ask, and I wanted to put a lawyer. Lawyer's name Yaron, and he said, for this, I'll do it for free. You don't have to pay me. He wrote, the other one wrote, my friend, you remember there was here the ambassador of Israel to the United Nations, Dan Gillerman. His wife, him were very good friends, especially his wife and my wife saw each other all the time, and so every function that in the embassy that they have were invited. So I told him the story. He said, I do it in 24 hours, don't worry about it. Okay, he went to Israel. 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month. Finally, I thought I'll ask him. I said, Dan, what's happening with the Keter? He said, leave it alone. And we gave up on it. I mean, it is there, it's not lost, but somebody stole it. I mean, nobody can deny because we have a receipt signed by President of Israel. Nothing to do.
How long has it been since you've been looking for it?
This, between 5 and 10 years, maybe. 5 years, more. At the time, I don't know. Truth, I don't remember exactly. But we had correspondence. When I wrote myself because Ben-Zvi Institute is part of Hebrew University. So I wrote to Hebrew University. The answer came, surprised you, at least it surprised me. They said, once you donate it, it doesn't belong to you anymore. Do you like this logic? So you donate it. Let's say you give money to somebody, it doesn't belong to you anymore. So why you're bothering?
Where's the justice in that?
I don't know. I mean, it is, you know what? I don't want to. I had people from Israel, they heard about it, and they said, okay, we'll fight for you, we'll do it, you don't have to pay us, but they wanted, if it is sold or found and so on, they want a portion, something like this. I find all the scheme, they want me to sign, me and my brother, that we gave power of attorney to so and so to go. I would never give a power of attorney to somebody. Why would I give him power of attorney to recover it? And God knows what, if he recover it, what he will do. After all, I don't know if you read, few months ago, an old, I forgot what it was, Jack Safra sold or bought, one of them, for 34 million. I forgot it was either Nebi'im or, I don't know. Anyway, it is like the Torah. So this, in the, my daughter-in-law, the wife of David, follow up a lot. And every time she said, it's crazy. It's like 30, 40, 50 million. You don't want to follow it? I can't do it. I'm too old to follow.
It's a loss to whoever we've seen it.
I don't think it's whoever have it. It is not lost as a document belonging to Jews. It's lost for me, for my family. But somebody have it. I mean, it's not thrown away. That's my my sort of consolation that it still exists.
Consolation is your beautiful family and your grandchildren.
Yeah.
That's your
I
heritage.
always say I don't want to blame my father, but he has his reason. I said it was for hundreds of years in the family. Why did they have to give it? But I can see his frame of mind. He's leaving, he don't know where he is going to be. He was afraid to lose it. He said, okay, I give it to the state of Israel. I mean, he make maybe more logical than I am saying. He doesn't know where he is. He would keep it with him at home. I don't know. It's very difficult to go into mind of somebody who it was rescued. It was supposed to be, could have been burned, destroyed, moved from Syria to Italy. I mean, I can't fault him for giving it. My logic today, it would have been nice just to keep it in the family. But when you are sort of refugees, you leave your home and you travel and you are of a certain age, I don't know.
If you're a refugee, you don't know what the end game will be, where you're going to be safe. And
Right.
so this is,
Yeah, I mean,
it could be safe in Israel.
My father suffered enough in Syria until he got permit to leave and so on. And so for him, and he didn't know where he was going. He went to Italy normal because his family is in Italy. But then my sister lived in New York. I was moving to New York and so on. So instead of being in Italy, which was probably a mistake on our part, we urged him to move to New York. My father and mother moved to New York from Italy. One of my sisters married an American, lived in New York. And therefore, you don't really have a roots anymore. I can sympathize with people who say they are refugees.
If you don't have roots in a place, you could have roots through an object.
I don't know. I mean, you know, when you don't have roots, like for example, when we were in Hong Kong, we moved to Brazil. From Brazil, I was debating. I wanted to go live in Italy, in Milano. But my wife, absolutely not. She doesn't want to learn a new language and so on. She insisted we come to New York, which is probably the right thing to do. I'm not faulting her at all. But, you know, you have this dilemma when you don't have roots. You don't know where you are, where you're going. I mean, I don't know whether you're maybe born and lived all your life in New York, and therefore you don't feel it the same way I feel it. It's very important to have roots. To have roots, to have community, to belonging.
I think that's a very touching way to conclude the interview. I would like to pause now, and we're going to look at the documents you were speaking about.
Sure.
And you'll be describing them off camera.
So what do? You take pictures of the
We're
document?
going to end the interview, and that'll be the next 10 minutes or so.
Okay. This photograph is of my family taken in Aleppo, Syria. The far left is my mother, Rachel. Next to her is my father, David. I am in the front with the white, and my sister Renee is on the left. No, the other right. I made a mistake.
That's you?
No, the first one on the right is my mother, Rachel. Next to her is Renee, my sister. Next sitting is me. And one standing is my brother, Maurice. This picture was taken in Fallujah, in mountain in Lebanon. This picture was taken in a studio in Aleppo, Syria. The one on the left is my mother, Rachel. Next is my father, David. Next to my father is myself, Miro. Then there is my sister, Renee. And the last one is my brother, Maurice. This is the wedding invitation of my parents' wedding in the Silvera synagogue. My father donated a Keter Torah written in Corfu in 1080, and this is the acknowledgement of the Ben-Zvi Institute signed by President Ben-Zvi. This is the receipt for the Keter Torah that my father donated to the Ben-Zvi Institute, and it states clearly that the Keter Torah is for study, not to be sold or used inappropriately. This is the wedding of my granddaughter, Gabrielle, at Blue Hill Stone Barn not too long ago.